Welcome to another episode of Room for a Podcast. I am Brittany and I have another amazing guest on today's episode, Dr. Barry. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Brittany?
Doing really good. Thank you so much for taking out time out of your busy schedule to come on today's episode and talk to us about mental health.
Yes,
That's a topic that everyone should hone in on because it only helps the person develop, over time.
absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so much misconception still. So I'm always happy to help educate the masses about mental health.
Okay, so from my understanding, you've been doing this since 2015. Um,
2014, technically into 2015. Yeah, that was my first year. Well, technically 2010, right? If we're counting bachelors, right? I
okay,
did
it counts.
psychology. Yeah. So I did get my bachelor's in psych. I graduated in 2014 with my bachelor's in psychology and then started my doctorate program 2014 as well, up to 2019, which is when I finished the doctorate and got a master's degree along the way as well.
Okay, so yeah, it counts. 2010 counts as well because it just shows that you've been doing this for a while, and it's obviously something that you enjoy because you've been doing it since 2010. That's dedication and commitment right there.
Yes, yes, for sure.
Um, so I came across your page on TikTok, of course. This is how I've been meeting a lot of the people I interview. They have good information on TikTok. They either like personally been through something or they have a super solid message and information that can help the masses. So I came across your page. I'm like, man, this is good information, So I
Thank
have
you.
to ask her to be on the episode just to talk to us about it.
Absolutely.
Um, so first off, like, what made you get into psychology? Like, how your upbringing, your background, like what is it?
Yeah. So, I mean, the short answer, if it could be boiled down to one word, would actually
Mhm.
probably be trauma. Like my own trauma led me to psychology. So, technically, I started formally studying psych in 2010, as I shared.
Mhm.
But I started reading up on psychology and human behavior and emotion and all of that stuff when I was about 8 years old. So I've actually been doing this for a really, really long time because I'm 31 going on 32 now. So um,
Okay.
but it definitely led me to become very curious about why people are how they are,
Mhm.
especially seeing a lot of different things within my own family, my extended family, certain people struggling with substance abuse and emotional regulation, and just generations of trauma. And at such a young age, I was like, there has to be something else, like they like this can't be the only way to live life.
Yeah.
And 8 year old me, I guess, just was wise enough to figure out that what people were probably missing was information, and knowledge about the self, which
Yeah.
was stopping them from able to know how to like navigate life well.
Mhm.
And so therapy and psychology has absolutely like saved my life, changed the trajectory of my life in every single way.
I can relate with the therapy saving life because a person their heart can be beating, blood going through their body and physically walking or alive, but they're not really living life because there's like so much like trauma, so much like just gunk and
Mhm.
and stuff they're holding on to going through life, and they can't really fully enjoy life because they're holding bags. I always like to compare it to like Erica Badu's song "Bag Lady."
Yeah.
Like when you go to therapy and you let
Mhm.
those bags go,
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
releasing a ton of bricks.
It really is. And I think, and I get it that like sometimes people are just, because I like to say, like, when people are like, oh, I don't believe in mental health or I don't believe in therapy, I'm like, what it really is typically that the person's just scared of someone like me, right? Because
Hmm.
you've been putting so much energy into essentially living a lie, right? Like lying to yourself about the hurt, the pain, not dealing with your emotions, suppressing, and you think that that's helpful, right?
Hmm.
But we know, like scientifically even, but also if you just really look at your life, or you don't even have to look at the science if you don't want to, just starting with
Hmm.
yourself. If you really look around at your life or the other people in your life that are living their life that way, ignoring the self, their life is not going very well,
Yeah.
right? Like they're trying to put on the facade that it is. They're saying
Hmm.
I'm unbothered, but then they're drinking themselves to sleep every night, or, they don't know how to express any of their emotions in any kind of healthy way. So it's like that stuff takes a toll on the body, on the mind. And yeah, we just have to be honest with ourselves. But therapists are not scary. Like, we're regular people. And, a lot of my clients call me their secret best friend,
Mhm. That's the relationship right there, like, but
Yes.
you feel comfortable talking to your therapist, or at least you should, and if you don't feel comfortable, either reevaluate how you look at the therapist or get a new therapist, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, it's one or the other. And I'm glad you brought that up, because sometimes I think people think therapy is magic. Like, you just go, you talk to somebody, and somehow
Mm-mm.
all your problems are fixed. No, you have to do things. You have to apply the psychology, apply what you're learning if you want your life to change.
Mhm,
But
yeah.
we're here to help guide, like, you're the expert of you, I'm the expert of psychology, and together we make this badass team to, like, help you heal and grow and all of that.
Yeah, that was my experience when you said some people, like, they drink themselves to sleep every night. So, like, I talk about it all the time, like, my sobriety or whatever, but before I would, I'm like, "Nothing bothers me. I'm okay. I'm perfectly fine," Meanwhile, I'm isolating, drinking myself to sleep every night, like, no kind of genuine relationships, not even understanding my body, what's going on physically or even emotionally. I was, like, just checked out, you know?
Yeah.
And, I'm past that. And even after, a while in therapy, sometimes it's still hard to find the words to explain how I'm feeling. But I'm glad I understand that. I can be like, okay, I can't put into words what I'm feeling, but eventually I'll get there and then it'll become easier.
Yeah,
Um
absolutely. Because that's processing, right? I think people want processing to be like, oh, I immediately know what I'm thinking or feeling, but that's not how processing works. It's like a free write almost, either
yeah.
verbally or writing, if you want to literally journal. But let it be messy, because the more
Mhm.
that you let out and talk and don't censor yourself, you're gonna get to those thoughts, those feelings, everything that's in the subconscious. That's how we get tap into the subconscious, by freeing ourselves of trying to be perfect when you're trying to explain what you might be feeling or thinking.
Yeah, so I didn't go to school for psychology or anything like that. I mean, I took psychology freshman year of college, and I still wasn't, again, 18 years old, finally away from home, and trying to just navigate life, what's what. So I don't really remember anything from that class. Oh, but around 2015, I started to really dive into personal development, because before that, I knew, like, okay, I wasn't aware of my emotions, but the way certain people live their lives, and the outcome that I had and the outcome that I was surrounded by, I'm like, there's a missing component here that I don't understand, how the people I know work so hard, but there is so little to show for it. So I came across personal development, and then personal development led me to human development and how the brain works and emotional intelligence. And I'm like, this is a whole lot of information that
Yeah.
I knew nothing about prior to 2015, 2016.
Yeah. And it's life changing, right? Like, just having it's really just like the knowledge, and also getting rid of, like, self-limiting beliefs, right? A lot of time, you probably seen in some of my videos, I often talk about, like, when you keep telling yourself this is just who I have to be, or this is just how things are, that becomes true, because our
Hmm.
beliefs are literally that powerful. But in reality, all this stuff is just skills. And if you get the knowledge and you apply it, you will continue to get better. No
Hmm.
different than when you learned how to do any other skill that you know how to do, whether that be writing, talking, whatever. You started off not knowing how to do those things. You practiced, you worked through, and you build the skills. Same with emotional regulation, emotional
Hmm.
intelligence. It's just skills that you have to practice.
So I want to ask you about, like, on your videos, like, the information, new information. I mean, of course, there's new information out there, but the information is mostly the same. It's all related to one another. So I want to
Yeah.
ask about, like, the emotional suppression and how, from your understanding, like, how does it affect people long term, unless as a kid. So a person from a kid, they're taught to you express their emotions, feel their feelings, feel their emotions, versus a kid that's like, stop crying, I give something to cry about. And these two people grow up, same age. One is
Mhm.
taught to feel emotions, the other one is taught to, you better be quiet.
Mhm. Yeah, a man. So I like to refer to emotional suppression as the world's largest generational trauma, because it's unfortunately been so commonly taught. And that just came out of the other generational trauma of people not having the skills within themselves to know how to deal with their emotions. So then they have kids and they're like, whoa, this little emotional person. Because when we're born, right, you haven't learned or haven't been taught that like you should not express your emotions. And no one should ever teach you that because
Yeah.
you are supposed to express them. But you come into the world like fully feeling free, unapologetically. Like my 2-year-old son, he shows every emotion. Doesn't ask nobody for permission. If he feels it, he's going to express it. Right. So when you're ill prepared because you were like taught to suppress, you're really blindsided almost by parenthood. If you don't, if you haven't healed, if you haven't learned better, you're going to be like, I don't know what to do with this human that's so comfortable being in touch with themselves. That's essentially what you're seeing with children. They're just, that nobody has told them that they're supposed to disconnect from self. And then you think that the solution is to teach them to disconnect from self when it's not. So suppression, man, this is such a big question because there's so many negative effects. Like where do we want to start? So we can start with the physical, I guess. Like emotional suppression is linked to a lot of physical health issues, including really serious things like stroke, heart attack, high blood pressure. There's a reason why Black people have some of the highest rates of stress-related disorders and physical disorders, like high blood pressure, etc. And also we have some of the highest rates of mental health disorders while also not seeking help. The correlation is there for a reason because these things are all connected. What you neglect emotionally, your body is going to be like, look, I've been giving you signs. I've been giving you time for years. I've been trying to release. I made you have panic attacks. You still ain't listen. I made you do this and that. You still have not listened. You still won't get help. I'm running out of things to do. And then your body starts shutting down and it turns on you essentially because all of that stuff you've been storing up, it has not had a place to go or to be released. And that's what emotions are supposed to, you're supposed to release them just like you do. If you need to sneeze, you sneeze, you need to cough, you cough. Emotions are the same. And what we're supposed to teach children is like, hey, here are what your feelings are trying to communicate to you. Here's how you can express them in healthy ways. Cry whenever you need to, please, because that's the easiest way to release. Easiest. Just cry. Like, you don't know what's going on. Just start crying. Just a quick release. And I think we have to like really educate people on breaking this association with crying being bad. Crying should be seen the same way you see any other releasing that you do, right? Any other type of release that you do, crying is in that same category. And that's why you can cry to any emotion. I always tell my clients, if somebody said you won $5 million, you wouldn't start crying. Right?
And y'all, she's a licensed clinical psychologist, so she's an expert. She knows what she's talking about. So I don't want anyone listening saying, "Man, I ain't studying that." Like she knows what she's talking about.
You just gotta really, and if you allow yourself to cry too, you often, like most people, just say like, "I felt a lot better. I felt a lot lighter," and it's because you what your brain was commanding you to do. It's telling you what to do. You just have to listen. So a child who is getting what they need will grow up to be emotionally intelligent, emotionally secure. They'll feel comfortable being themselves, expressing themselves. They would have learned the tools of how to like have healthy communication, how to express anger in a healthy way. That's why so many adults don't know how to do that, right? They think anger is bad and they bottle it up and then it comes out and them fighting and yelling and screaming in the streets, like, and it's like there's way better ways to deal with anger. But like you were saying earlier, we just have to be educated on these things. Like most people don't even know anger is a secondary emotion. So
it is.
Yeah.
Usually it comes from maybe it could be like sadness or fear, but it is masked as anger.
Yeah.
I'm mad, but it's really fear. I'm afraid, or I'm mad, but I'm actually really sad, and anger is more comfortable to say I'm sad.
Yeah.
Not me, but most people.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they're all like that. They all communicate different things. But that's what emotional intelligence is. And so many people were deprived of it because their parents weren't taught by their parents and their parents weren't taught by their
because if you go back a few generations, what you better not say anything, especially for people of color. Most of my information is is mostly, I have a bias on it, not a bias, but how things affects me directly. And so I can't speak for other people, but people of color in my circle, if I go back generations, then no one was you weren't able to express how you felt. You just did what you had to do, be quiet, get it done. And then they had kids, and even though they might have been able to say things, but now no, you talk to don't say if you upset, don't say it. You say it, you better get to work. Keep it to yourself, and then it just continues this cycle of emotional suppression and
Yeah.
not knowing that it's okay to feel those feelings.
Mhm. Not only is it okay, it's a human necessity. That's
Hmm.
why we feel so disconnected from one another. Like you were talking about disconnection earlier in relationships. A
Hmm.
major part of that, the biggest part of that, is people being so afraid to be emotional and to be vulnerable. We've essentially like created a society that is like completely opposite of what we need as human beings. And I know this sounds crazy, but like the ideal human society, what would have been healthiest for all of us for us to get our emotional needs, is that everybody have super high empathy and emotional intelligence to the point where you could be walking down the street and maybe something overcomes you and you feel the need to cry, and people, strangers on the street, should have had the emotional intelligence to come up to you, say, hey,
Yeah.
is everything okay? Do you need to talk? That was the world we should have created. Right? Because that's what we need, right?
Yeah.
People should not have to come to someone like me just to be heard. I can't tell you how many clients I've had where they're like, you're the first person to just listen and provide a safe space for my feelings. But that was a need you've had from birth. There's a reason why you
Hmm.
entered the world crying. Like you needed to be heard and seen and validated and have space for your emotions and held accountable and all that stuff too. But you've needed that your whole life. And we're so deprived of getting our emotional needs met. And everybody has like these surface level relationships as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know growing up, I was always told that I was a crybaby. I remember that a little bit, but I don't
Mhm.
know. At some point, I just stopped crying. Like
Yeah. And
I
what
don't know when. Hmm?
where's the show me the baby that doesn't cry? What baby doesn't cry?
I
Tell us
know.
that baby is crazy. Like
I don't know. At some point, I just stopped crying, and then as a preteen or teenager, even a younger adult. I'm 31 now. A younger adult. I just wasn't. I have like no emotions, anger, none, sadness, nope,
Mhm.
happiness. No, just like bland. Just
Yep.
haze gray. And then got became sober, met my wife, and she studies psychology. Well, she's a psychology major. She has like one class left. Yeah, and so she's huge on emotional intelligence, and she'd been going to therapy for years. So we met. I'm like, nah, I'm not doing therapy. She kept talking about it. I'm like, I'm okay. I'm not doing it. And
Mhm.
then she ended up becoming my safe spot, my safe space. And then
Mhm.
other things start to happen. I'm like, okay, let me seek out therapy. But I appreciate her because she became like the initial safe space to be like, hey, it's okay to feel emotions. You don't have to be PMSing to cry. Like it's okay to
Such a
have those
line.
emotions.
When people are just like, "Oh, I'm just so emotional right now because I'm on my period." I'm like, "No, you're emotional all the time. You're just
Hmm.
more aware of it right now because there's so much going on hormonally, but it's there all the time. We're in an
Hmm.
emotional state, you and I, right now. Like you're always in an emotional state. But again, it
Yep.
goes back to us just not like having widespread knowledge about our brains.
Hmm.
Because I did make one TikTok about about like I don't think a lot of people know that. So, like 80% of your brain, you have those four lobes, right? And then you got the cerebellum and the brainstem. But all four of those lobes deal with emotion in one
Hmm.
way or another. So essentially, our brains are just one big emotional organ. Of course, it has
Hmm.
other vital functions, but every single part, 80% of your brain, right, has some relationship with one another to emotion, right, in those
Hmm.
lobes. So it's like you can't run away from your
Who
anatomy.
you are. Like
Like
this is what we made of.
it's hello, it's your brain. So unless you don't have a human brain, then we can talk maybe. But our
Yeah.
brains are way more similar than they are different. And no, regardless of sex, gender, any of that stuff, the emotion pieces are pretty much the same from person to person. And the only
Hmm.
reason we see all this difference with comfort with emotion is because of how you've been conditioned and socialized. So if you grew up in a home where people shut that down, that's how you've gotten to where you are now. That's not really you. Because if we could go in a time machine, if you meet every child, we could somehow meet almost all 8 billion people when they were children right now that currently exist, right? you would see a crying, feeling human being. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
did this to you. It's a trauma response, not who you are.
Yeah, my I have a 4-year-old daughter, 4.5, and she, I mean, she's smart, but she's so verbal, and she
Hmm.
feels her feelings. Like
Yeah.
if she's sad, she will cry, and then she'll tell you after when she's done crying, I was sad because XYZ, or I was angry because, like, she tells you what's going on. And I'm like, man, because before, I'm triggered. I don't want to hear the cry. Like, what? I don't want to hear the crying, But then with developing and growing and understanding, it's like, that's a normal emotion. Let her
Yeah.
cry it out. And
Mhm.
then that's how, because I want her to become a decent human being. I don't
Yeah.
want to condition her to become an adult that just follows directions and can't express how she's feeling or
Hmm.
regulate. But
Absolutely. No,
kids will definitely show
we need
you.
more of it. We do not need any more of that. Like a lot of our problems as adults is just a bunch. It's basically a bunch of broken children in adult bodies just walking around. So we don't need
Yeah.
we don't need any more. So yeah, I'm glad you realized that like that was something that someone conditioned you to feel uncomfortable with because you did
Hmm.
not start life feeling triggered by crying. There is no
No.
human being that did, right? Crying was a normal, natural thing until someone made you feel bad about your own crying, right?
Hmm.
So, no, you're doing a great job as a parent by letting
Thank
her
you.
know, yeah, and allowing her to learn about her feelings so that she can grow up into an adult who can articulate what she's feeling, express herself well, and to be releasing, most importantly, so that she's then not trying to find things to cope with the emotions that her brain will continue to create without her
Hmm.
permission, right? Because we don't want that. That's when people get into some bad habits of trying
Yeah.
to cope.
Only thing I tell them, like, there's a place for everything. Don't be throwing yourself on the floor at Target.
Mhm. That's
There's a place.
the regulation piece. It's like, hey, nothing wrong if when we get back home, if it make you feel good to maybe throw a pillow on the floor or stomp around and get the energy out, that's fine. But we in Target. So can we find
Yeah.
a different way while we're in here at least to express how we're feeling? Maybe use our words for now, and then maybe we can go drive somewhere where we're out away from people if you need to scream into the sky. But right now is not the place.
Yeah. Don't be throwing yourself on the floor at Target.
Like not a Target, not a Target. Don't kick us out.
Another thing you talked about was learned helplessness. I want to like know
Yeah.
more about that because I don't know. Like I came up in a household of 6 kids, and we all have different personalities or whatever. And then some people, not my siblings, but like other people I know, would have like this. Oh, this is just the way it is. Like I'm like, there's more. You can do more. There, you can do more. So from a professional, I would like tell me more about that. The
Yeah.
learned helplessness, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So learn helplessness. I guess I'll start real quickly by breaking down one of the most like well-known studies about it and how we learned about it. So we actually one of the studies that helped us learn what learned helplessness was back in the day, before we had a very clear ethics board, should I say. Someone explain this and you're gonna be like, what? They did what to dogs? Um,
Okay.
right. They use dogs, right? And dogs are mammals just like us.
Hmm.
And they used dogs, and basically they had two phases of this experiment. So they had the dogs in two separate groups. One group was the control group. So these dogs were put into a room where they had the option to like press a button with their nose to stop a shock to their body.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. That's why I told you about the ethics board first. Everybody was like, what? But yeah, but it was like a mild shock, nothing like too crazy that will be life threatening. But the point is, the dogs in the control group had an option, right, to be able to do something with their free will to stop the shock.
Hmm.
Whereas the other dogs in the experimental group did not have that option. They literally, all that would happen was a light would come on, which warned them that the shock was about to happen. The shock would happen, and the dogs would get shocked until the next time the light came on and it happened again. So that was,
Okay.
yeah. So that was phase one. Then in phase two, they take these same dogs and they put them in like this box that has a real short barrier. Like you could literally just step over it. Don't even need to jump. And
Hmm.
they basically did the same type of experiment. But the difference was now all the dogs, if they wanted to, could escape this very easily by just stepping over the barrier. So even
Hmm.
easier than having to figure out what this button is or whatever. And what they found was the vast majority of the dogs that were initially in the experimental group that did not have an option to escape the first time, most of them stayed in that spot
Mhm.
and got shocked, even though they could have just stepped over the barrier. Whereas, of course, the control group, they were like, I'm out of here, right?
Yeah.
Those are like, I feel empowered. I'm about to jump over y'all crazy, right? But the lesson there was that our past experiences, especially if we can't figure out what to do, can start to make us feel like there's nothing we can do.
Mm.
And just because you have that belief, then when you do have options of what you can do to respond to a problem, you might not realize that you can. And so that was kind of where we start. One of the studies that really helped us understand learned helplessness. And unfortunately, because of historical traumas and all that stuff, people of color and especially Black people have some of the highest rates of learned helplessness because there
Mhm.
are a lot of societal barriers, oppression, racism, a lot of things that do maybe make it harder for you to figure out how to essentially succeed or how to avoid that shock, right?
Yeah.
So learned helplessness is a mindset. It is a mindset that can be unlearned. But in my experience with helping, and I've helped many people overcome this mindset, but in my experience, it can be hard because the person just really feels like, nah, this is just life, right? And it's like trying to also tell them like, yeah, there really are barriers. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you that, yeah, world is already great and we fixed all the problems. That's just not the truth. But
Mhm.
helping them see how they can utilize their free will better and actually navigate problems and find solutions. And most of it boils down to learning how to get disciplined around doing what you don't want to do sometimes so that it
Mhm.
can get you to where you need to be,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes we're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to end this relationship because X, Y, and Z, or I don't want to this or that because X, Y, and Z. But the problem is, if you're not willing to do that, the consequences just keep you in a place of learned helplessness. So at some point, you do have to say, this might be hard if I end this relationship or quit my job or whatever. But if I plan strategically and use my free will properly, I can make this transition easier for myself, even though, of course, there'll be emotional things that I'll have to work through. But that's a part of it too, right? People not
Mhm.
knowing how to work through their feelings. So they're like, I can't leave this relationship that's going to cause me grief. And I don't even know how to handle regular sadness. Right.
Yeah.
So like that's a part of the fear too. So the emotional intelligence piece and training and teaching people about their feelings and how to work with them and how to understand them, as well as teaching them about just how much power they actually have regardless of some of the societal barriers, is how you can break the curse of learned helplessness.
So have you helped people of, like, I know, all age groups, like older, people and younger people? So I think it's maybe easier for, well, they say it's easier for a younger person to shift their mindset, but I think it's the same level. It has a lot to do with the willingness to change. Even if they're like
Yes.
60 years old, I've been doing this for 45 years, but are you willing to change? You
Yeah.
know?
And you're so here's the thing. I feel like a big part of why people who are 60, 70 or whatever are more stubborn around their beliefs is because, again, it goes back to conditioning. They've been conditioned by other people who used to be that age, right? That said like,
Hmm.
oh, once you get to this age, you're just how this is
Just
just
how
who you
you
are.
is. Yeah.
We've all heard that. Like you as a kid heard that.
Hmm.
So if you're hearing that from people in their 50s, 60s, 70s when you're 10 years old, you're already being subconsciously conditioned to believe that you can't change your beliefs when you get older. But if you're still alive, you can change your beliefs. There's no age, your brain's not like, you're one day too late. We're too
Yeah.
old now. Like there's no such thing. So I have had older client, the oldest client I've ever had, and people are always surprised by this, but it was 83 years old. So it's never
That
too
I'm
late.
shocked.
No. Everybody's always a little surprised by that, but it's never too late.
I agree. It's never too late.
Mhm.
I read this. I listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza a lot and read his books. And I know some people in the medical field or like certain boards doesn't they don't really like believe in his teachings and stuff. But I'm like he has good information.
Yeah.
Like what is it? Neurons that fire together, wire together. So like certain habits that you're doing or thought patterns that you have, if you change it and just like counteract the old thought pattern, then
That's,
that's how
that's,
you overcome.
that's all. That's all. We're kind of like computers. Like what software are you continuously downloading? You know, like that's gonna make the difference for you. And if you start speaking to yourself differently, like and realizing that yes, you can acknowledge who you are today. Like anytime I hear one of my clients, especially, and they only do this usually early on in therapy because you're not gonna be working with me much. It's so long and still be saying this after a while. But like people will be like, but that's not me. Like I can't set boundaries. I can't. And I'm like, okay, you're telling me about who you are today. And that's important. We need to know where we're starting. But what are you doing on a daily basis to get to where you're trying to be? Because that, like, you have to take the accountability for, like, you're choosing each day to do these things over and over, and you're reinforcing them. You're not, you know, it's not like you are incapable of doing something else. You might be shaking in your boots, but you can set a boundary.
Yeah.
The first time might be really scary.
Yeah, it is. It's super scary. You want me to do what? What? What if they say something? What if they say this when I set the boundary?
And I'd be like, let's go through those scenarios. What do you know, because what ifs, I always say they're questions, right? Answer the question. What if they do this? Okay, I would then say this, or I will do this. If it helps you prepare for that interaction, then answer those what ifs. But we still need to have that interaction if we want to grow. At least
And most times, in my experience, when you set a boundary, most times the person don't even ask several questions. They might be kind of shocked and might be a little upset, but then they're not gonna be asking you, but why and why this, why that. So we create scenarios in our head that doesn't exist, that hasn't happened yet, or that won't ever happen. You know, and it just it becomes scary. Like we have a whole cinema going on in our head about a situation that ain't even happened.
It's not even gonna happen, because you also got to remember who you're probably interacting with. This is a person who hasn't done much self-work. They're not as clever as you think they are. You know, like you're doing self-work, so you're gonna be able to have things to say in response. And if all else fails and you feel like the conversation is not productive anymore, you literally just say that. That's the ultimate boundary. I'm trying to have a productive conversation here with you. It seems like we're not getting anywhere, and I'm not doing the yelling and screaming. I'm not doing that with you. So if you are open to having a respectful, you know, dialogue later, let me know. But right now, this is over.
Yeah.
Gone. We ain't got to deal with they back and forth. The what ifs all just ended by you just ending the conversation. So it's just about us like knowing our power. Like you don't have to keep talking to the person. So you can stop at any time. Hang up the phone, whatever. Like you don't have to. So it's so important that we focus on what's in our control.
Yeah. For me, I used to be a person that ran away from confrontation. Anything that's uncomfortable, got me feel a little, you know, I have to set a boundary or just bring up too many heavy emotions that I'm already not dealing with. I'm running away. I'm gonna move across the country. I'm moving to a different state. Honestly, I ended up joining the military, like stuff going on. I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm joined the military and moved to San Diego. Like, made a huge decision off temporary emotions, but you know that's a whole other story, and it helped me a lot. But still, I joined the military. Like,
So it's okay to sometimes like take breaks from difficult conversations, but if you hadn't started practicing, you would have never got better. So that's why I tell everybody, like, I'm only as good as I am now at like assertive communication and boundary setting because I practice. Because otherwise, how else have I gotten here? You think if you had met me at 1 year old, I would have been like, yeah, I'm gonna not let you do that to me. Like, this to get to that point. So we just got to remember how we started life, which was anything that you wanted to get better at, you just allowed yourself to learn, make mistakes, and you pushed yourself. That's literally how you started with everything. You came into the world not knowing how to do much, and you have come so far already. So just keep adding to it. But sometimes, yeah, you might decide I don't want to engage with this particular person, and it's okay to do that from time to time. But no practice means no growth. So
yeah. And back to what you said, like the software we're downloading, like our brain is like a computer, and I'm like, most people, I'll say 85% of people, when there's a new iPhone or a new Android, like a new phone come out, they're gonna get the new phone. Or if your phone has an update, you're gonna plug it in the charger. Make sure you're on Wi-Fi. You're gonna update the software. I'm like, why is that device more important than your well-being? Like,
woo, preach.
like just
Preach.
update the software. You know, I'm not a professional. I've read a lot, and based off my own experiences, how I've made certain decisions and how it affected my life. I'm like, just update the software. It's
Big,
ugly.
that's it. It's that simple. But people find it hard to come to terms with the fact that it's that simple because they've just seen so much learned helplessness around them. They're like, ain't no way it's that simple. Because then why didn't my whole family do that? And look, that's their personal journey with their
Mm-hmm.
growth and their mental health and all that stuff. They got trapped by the same mindset you're struggling with now. Don't let it happen to you because you don't want to
Yeah.
be 50 years old. Like, dang, I could have just went to therapy and like got some help and that would have changed my life. Yes, it would have. It did for me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what people need to realize too. A lot of therapists, most therapists go to therapy. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like we just telling you to come just like because we're trying to keep our business going. It's like, no, we literally do this ourselves. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
the only way to get better.
It's like as far as being a therapist, I heard of what is it, vicarious trauma by being a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by you going to therapy, does that help you with the vicarious trauma aspect of it to not be too like bogged down with other people's stuff?
Yeah, for sure. That and even from when I started my doctorate program, I just like there was a lot of talk from time to time when I was in my program about the importance of knowing how to essentially shut work off when work is over. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been practicing that for a long time at this point. And that doesn't, of course, mean like I don't still think about my clients when I'm not working. It's, of course, I do. I love them. They mean a lot to me, and I want them all to thrive and do well. But the main thing that I reinforce within myself that helps with that, in addition, of course, to going to therapy on and off just throughout my life whenever I need it, but is I just really like know from a psychological standpoint that like I don't control anybody but myself. So that stops me from accidentally taking on responsibilities of someone else's growth. Like I'm not responsible for my client's growth. They're coming
Mm-hmm.
to me for information that I have and guidance that I can provide. But how much they grow is not on me. That's on how much they're willing to do. And so you really have to like separate yourself from that. And because I know that, like, because of how free will works, the only person I truly control is myself, nobody
Mm-hmm.
else on the planet. It really does help with the vicarious trauma stuff. Because then you don't accidentally end up feeling responsible for stuff that you didn't do. Like you could literally lead, like they say, what you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
facts. Like I can give you all the information in the world, and you can still decide to decline all of it or not do anything with it. I mean, you see people on TikTok doing that all the time. You got all this free information and you still like in the comments like, no, I don't care what those 100,000 studies with brain imaging. Trauma's fine. I'm gonna still spank my kid. It's like, okay, well then what am I supposed to do? I don't know
Yeah.
how to help you. Like if that's what you want to tell yourself, there's nothing I can really do. But being
Mm-hmm.
in the place of this job, usually by the time someone's decided to come to you, they already have like some sense of like, yes, my growth is my responsibility. So that
Mm-hmm.
helps.
Okay, good. I
Mhm.
was just wondering about that. And as far as like people to come to you when they're ready, I know. So I've had like a few other. I'm in therapy now, of course. It's helpful. And I think that the first therapist I had, I don't know. One, probably I wasn't really fully ready, and two, she didn't really understand like it was like the interpersonal barriers or biases that's out there in the world. She didn't understand. I don't know if she understood it, or maybe I just wasn't willing to really open up to her. But I'm like, this is not working. Like, firing her and getting another therapist that can kind of understand like the barriers, the trauma, and how I can like grow, like just understanding like the full picture of it, and not just a textbook part, but like understanding. Not saying that for a therapist, not saying that for a therapist to understand me, they have to be a person of color. But the first therapist didn't really understand how I got to where I was and the relationship I had with my family. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
keep it at that. But I was like,
Hmm.
man, this is not working. And
Yeah.
then luckily with the personal development, I'm like, okay, if it's not working, what can I do? What can I do? And then
There
end
you
up
go,
getting,
free will. There you go.
yeah.
Choice decision making. Yeah, exactly. And you're bringing up a great point of like therapists are not one size fits all. I tell people
Hmm.
that all the time. And if you're in this field, or just if you're in the healthcare field, period, like if you're a doctor or nurse or whatever, you should be used to people choosing to go to someone else. Like
Yeah.
that happens all the time, all the time. So So your therapist will still, because we're human and we have emotions and our brain creates them. Like your therapist might feel disappointed if you decide to go somewhere because they feel connected to you to some degree, right? Because they've been working with you.
No,
But
that's
like,
not their therapist. It was
no,
no kind of connection. It was just like, man, this is like a waste of insurance money.
oh, you made the right. Yeah, when it's feeling that bad, it's time to go.
Yeah.
It's time to go. But yeah, like and people don't need protection from their emotions because
Hmm.
if you're protecting them from their emotions, they can't learn about them and learn to work with them, right? Because this is just a constant thing that's happening. So let them feel their feelings. A person
Hmm.
who doesn't feel disappointment will never learn how to work with disappointment.
Hmm.
Right? Like it's very simple. So I'm glad you changed therapists because that sounds like first person was not it. But it is definitely not a, you can just go to anybody. Now, some people get lucky on the first try and they
Hmm.
just like, meet with a therapist and like, oh my God, this is it. I've definitely had that with clients where they're like, man, my so-and-so friend went through all these people. I met you and I'm happy, like I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool, I'm glad it feels like a good fit. But if it doesn't feel like a good fit, like you were saying, it's important to figure out, is this like something with me? Like, was I not ready to maybe open up enough in the space so that I can get what I need in the
Hmm.
space? Because we can only help you with what you're willing to share. So
Hmm. Yeah.
that make my job easier if I could read people's minds, but I can't. Um, so like you have to be ready to be open to some degree, or at least to peel back the layers slowly. You don't have to do everything on day one, but to at least trust and build a bond that needs to be there. So if you can't bond with the person, it's okay. It's okay to fire us. I am saying for everyone, it's okay. Like just if you're not, you hired me. If I'm
Yeah.
not meeting your needs, that's your first lesson. That's your
Hmm.
first lesson on self advocacy. Say bye bye. Just I will wish you well. Like it's okay. You literally are hiring us. So make sure that it feels like a good fit, but also be self reflective
Hmm.
because it's not impossible for the client to be the problem. Like if you don't
Yeah.
went through 10 therapists and you couldn't connect that all with none of them, might be look in the mirror. Just saying, like might be something else going on there.
Yeah, my mom was lucky. Like, so my wife got my mom into therapy right before I got into therapy, and she's had the same therapist since. I'm like, oh, it's cool. I'm glad you found somebody that that work with you, that works for you, whatever. But yeah, nah, it took me about like
Yes.
three, two
Mm-hmm.
or three therapists.
I would say that's probably if I'm not sure what the average is, but I would guess it's probably around 2 to 4. Uh,
Okay.
like especially if you're not maybe as familiar with how to kind of weed through the like the bios and stuff that people have. I
Hmm.
like now that therapists also sometimes do videos, so because that like gives you a feel for them a
Hmm.
bit more than just reading a paragraph or two that they wrote. But no, going through a handful, like a few therapists, like that's pretty normal and standard for people. 3 or 4 would probably be the average if I had to guess.
Okay, it's good. And I tell people, I'm like, if you go to a restaurant and you don't like the food, then you ain't gonna go again, or you're gonna say, hey, this is not what I ordered. The
Mhm.
food isn't done, or like this drink is watery. Like there's no, like I need y'all to, whatever it is. Like,
Yes.
so why can't, like, what's wrong with doing it about your life? Like if
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
like,
also let the therapist know because you're bringing up that point too. Like you can start there. If you're like,
Mhm,
hey, we don't have like 3, 4 sessions, and I know you have your maybe approach to therapy, whatever, but I feel like it's not really what I expected or what will work best for me. Maybe the person's a little more like kind of Freudian with their approach, and you're looking for a more little like relational kind of, person that can like just connect with you where it feels kind of more natural and normal.
mhm,
Communicate that to the therapist. You might be surprised once you tell them what you're kind of looking for, how they can switch their approach up for you because they
mhm,
just met you. So like it's important for you to say like how you're feeling in the space and yeah, see if they can then switch it up and meet your needs. But if not, know that there are other people and you can switch out if you need to. But communication is really important. And I usually check in with new clients after a handful of sessions just to see how they're feeling and how things are going. But I don't know that all therapists do that. So please know that you can advocate for that and just say like, hey, I would like for this session for us to talk a little bit about how things are going. You can say it. You don't have to wait for the therapist to say
yeah.
it.
But the fact that you reach out to your clients after the first session, that's
Yes.
good. It shows that you're like following up. Hey, is this going to be a good fit?
Yep.
What would you like to see? In the next session, if there's a next session.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So as far as like, I saw you talking about music being an emotional regulation or release, a way to release emotions. Like, can we talk about that too? Because I'm like, there are several ways to get in touch with your emotions,
Mhm.
and it's a lot. I know there's like a lot of information you can tell us. We'll be on here for hours, but people love music, so.
Yeah. So music, like, because oftentimes because people have been kind of conditioned to emotionally suppress, I'll have people commenting like, "How do I feel?" And when I read that question, it's heartbreaking because it's like somebody really disconnected you from that original thing that you knew how to do,
Hmm.
right? But how you can get back in touch with that is by different forms of like things like music, sometimes shows, things that like cause you to kind of tap into emotion. And music's great though too because it gets into body movement
Hmm.
and sound stimulation and stuff like that, which can really help you release. So if you're feeling, if you're unclear about what you're feeling and you think you might be feeling sad or something like that, it can be helpful to get that crying or that releasing going by listening to a song that
Hmm.
is reflecting what you think you might be feeling. But don't stop there. Like, listen to the music, allow yourself to cry, maybe journal afterwards, talk to some of your safe people afterwards. Let the music be the catalyst for you releasing and processing, right? But yeah, stop and dance around like nobody's looking. Like, music can be really helpful in so many ways as a release. And don't
Mm.
forget about body movement because I think people forget about that. Like, if you feel overwhelmed, move your body like in whatever way feels good and natural and releasing. Like, if you're angry, stomping around might feel good. If you're feeling really happy and you just want to like literally do a happy dance, like allow your body to just free flow and move, and it really is cathartic and helps us release.
I think stomping would be kind of like challenging because think about if you were a kid or especially a teenager and you upset and you stomp away from your parents. I know you
Mm-hmm.
ain't in there stomping. It's like I don't know. That would be.
Yeah, but see, that's on the parent to unlearn that. That's what I would say, right? I think we've been taught that a lot of things are disrespectful that are actually really helpful for emotional regulation, especially when you're young and your
Hmm.
brain is still developing. So like your child needing to release anger if they start stomping, like I promise you it's not because they're trying to disrespect you. They're just trying to find a place to release that energy. No different
Mm,
than a toddler who gets frustrated and might hit you initially. Like they're just learning and they feel very overwhelmed. They also don't have any impulse control really yet until they're like around 7 years old. And still then it's still not that great until you're in your 20s. So
mm,
yeah, if your teen is like feeling some type of way and you don't want them maybe to stomp away from you or something, you can compromise with that and say like, it's fine for you to go stomp, but like, can you go do that in your room in the privacy of your space, right? But to tell them that they can't release in a healthy way, it's not really helping anything. If they're not yelling and cursing at you, they're not disrespecting you. They're
mm.
just trying to release what they're feeling, and they have the right to be mad at you. Yikes.
Yeah.
Your kids can be mad at you. My toddler gets mad at me all the time because I'm telling him not to touch something that's dangerous, right? But I understand he doesn't understand why I'm telling him no. And
Hmm.
as adults, we all know that it doesn't always feel good to hear no. So
Hmm.
why would you expect your kid not to react to that or get mad about that? That's ridiculous. You get mad when your boss told you you couldn't have the day off for the holiday or whatever.
I know,
So
right?
mad. Your kids no different. They mad because you said they couldn't have that snack right now. Okay,
Yeah.
let them be mad, but show them how to express that in a way that's healthy, not just about respect, but also just about a healthy release for them.
Yeah. And so for the people who like, for me, I've been doing like a lot of inner child work to get back in touch with who I am as a person, so
Yeah.
I can be the best version of myself for me, my spouse, my kids,
Mm-hmm.
family, and just a good human. So like, how could people start back getting getting back in touch with their inner child, like by doing like art, uh
Mm-hmm.
music, sports, all those things. Like, what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I think the greatest place to start is to try to think back as much as you can to some of those natural things that you gravitated towards as a child. And I know it can be hard because for some people, trauma like started right after they got home from the hospital, right? Like, so
Mm.
that's it can be hard to kind of remember who was I before the trauma if all I can remember is the trauma. But there was something there because it takes some time for trauma to have a significant effect, like before the trauma responses start developing and all of that. It's not like you have, your parent spanked you once and then all of a sudden now you're completely shut down, right? No, it's the consistent abuse or neglect or whatever that over time starts to psychologically break a person. So if you can just think of things you naturally gravitated towards as a child, did you like to draw, did you like to write, did you like to dance, did you like to sing, try to find ways to incorporate those things back into your life now, because we were never supposed to stop anything from childhood that we did naturally. None. The feeling, the different interests you had, you were supposed to be in a safe, nurturing, loving environment where your parents nurtured those things within you so that they could develop further, right? So that's all that was supposed to happen in the first place. If you can identify those things, you can, reparent yourself essentially and nurture those things within you, and get them back to where they should have been in the first place, right? Ending up
Yeah.
with you feeling like a whole version of yourself and an authentic person.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Like, I know one thing for me was like music when I was younger and playing sports. And I never really learned to like play instruments, but I mean, I played. I think I was in band in sixth grade. I played the baritone, like it's like a small
Yeah.
tuba, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
was because my last name is Taylor, so I was on the end of the list. So by the time I got up there to choose an instrument, it was like a tuba, a baritone, or something else. So I chose that. So I enjoyed that, but it took me. It was years before I realized, like, I like music. I like to learn. I like to listen to the keys and try to learn to play those things again. And that was up until like maybe a year ago when I started
Oh,
realizing that.
that's
And I'm
so
like,
sweet.
yeah. So I'm like, man, everyone need to.
You're just gonna feel more fulfilled because you're like getting back into you, like the
Hmm.
real you before the conditioning, before any trauma, before any of that. You're getting back in touch with your real authentic self. And that is the key to like overall life satisfaction and happiness. Not conforming to the
Hmm.
pressures of society or whatever it is, but like actually being who you are and what makes you happy. So when you were little, you really like to paint your nails and you don't paint your nails no more, go back to painting your nails. If you did this, whatever it may be, like please find those things, get back in touch with those things because we're not all meant to be the same. We're actually all supposed to be very, very, very different from one another in
Hmm.
every category that you can think of. So live into your truth as much as you can. And if we all keep doing that, and saying, no, we're no longer going to conform to these boxes that were created for mostly marketing tactics and things
Hmm.
like that to be able to sell stuff to y'all. If y'all really want to know why people put
Hmm.
you in boxes, that's one of the main reasons. Like we have to get back into accepting that life is gray. It will continue to be gray. It's not black and white. And you're supposed to just be yourself. And there's no wrong way to be you, except for if you're being you by trying to do what other people told you to do. That's
Yeah, I
not
know, right?
that's not being yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Barry. This has been a phenomenal episode, super helpful. I
Yeah,
hope people, take into consideration everything you've said, the information that you've given us, and maybe think about going to therapy or reevaluating the way they look at life, the way they do things. Because it'll
just read
be.
a book. Like if you ain't ready for therapy, just we have so many books. Just
Mhm.
get some books on psychology, something. Learn about your brain. You should be able to at least name 3 parts of your brain and what it does. If you can't do that, go get an anatomy book today. Like this, it's okay. Start somewhere. Watch YouTube videos. I don't care, but do
Yeah, I was
this.
gonna say if you don't read, there's audiobooks, there's YouTube, there's podcasts, video
It's
games, I'm sure.
video game, like all kind of this. Please do something to help yourself today. Like something.
I was gonna ask if there's anything else you want to leave us with, but I think you just
Yeah.
said basically. But is there anything else you want to leave our viewers and listeners something
No,
to
just
ponder on?
yeah, I'm just sending everybody love and light. I hope that we will all learn that the best thing that we can dedicate ourselves to is self growth and healing and growing. And remember that, like, your growth and your healing journey is just that, a journey, not a destination. So if you think you're done growing, that means that you are limiting your full potential. You are not. Like that, you should be doing this for the rest of your life. Continue to process, continue to learn about yourself, continue to update your beliefs, please. Like all of that stuff, you should be doing that until the day you pass at when you're 125 years old. Okay? So we got a whole 125 years of doing what we need to do to grow.
Absolutely. You never stop growing, never stop learning.
No.
It's always
Unless
something to know. Hmm?
unless you decide to. And that's what people do. They
But
choose.
that's a choice.
It absolutely is. Please.
Again, thank you so much, Dr. Berry.
Oh,
I will put your information, like your TikTok
yes,
handle
please.
and all that in the show notes. Is there any, what else can viewers find you, or should they just go directly to your social media
For
to?
right now, yeah, for right now, my main social media platform that I use professionally would be TikTok. So my TikTok platform would be the best place for now until I add other things. But whatever I end up adding, you'll be able to find it because I'll link it on TikTok in the future.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right, y'all. This is another amazing episode, and I hope to see y'all on the next episode. And we are out.
Bye.